Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming, guys, whether you're watching us on YouTube, on Rumble, and on X. The other day, I was scrolling on social media, and especially on X, and I read a post or a comment by Jory Micah, and she was asking to participate in some podcasts about her journey, about her personal journey from in her upbringing. She was raised as a Zionist and then changed her mind, and I was very fascinated by her arguments on her own X account, and also wanted to host her because I'm very interested in listening to human stories. Myself, I was born in a very, I would say, politicized family. I'm a third generation survivor of the Armenian genocide, so I know what genocide means. And if one day if the Armenians decide to genocide other people, I would be the first one to oppose that. So I'm very motivated to speak about what's happening against the Palestinians. And when I saw the comment of Jory, I really wanted to host her, so I sent her an invitation and she accepted. So I'm very happy to have her today. She's a minister, a Christian theologian, an anti-war activist, and author of Breaking the Glass Steeple. Jory, thank you so much for coming today to the show. I hope you're doing well today.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you for
Peter,
having me. It's an honor to be here.
it's my pleasure, actually. And when I was watching one of your interviews on YouTube, and you were a guest on another Peterson's show 2 3 years ago, and it came to my mind that also Jordan Peterson is a Peterson. So I wanted to really ask you if you are related, because recently he
No
blocked.
way. No.
Because he blocked me. He blocked me on X. And I have a personal story with him. Peterson helped, his teachings helped me when I was passing through difficult times, and I was in a dark place as a man a few years ago. And when I watched his lectures, let's say those lectures that he recorded on YouTube, and they helped me. So I wanted to give something back to him, and I flew to Greece, and I gifted him a traditional historic Aleppo soap, which Queen Zenobia and Queen Cleopatra used to use. This is a very ancient thing.
Okay.
And we had a conversation. He was very nice to me, and yeah. And then when this Gaza war started, war between quotation, of course,
Right.
and he was speaking about castrating kids and how it is criminal, etc., etc. And I said, it's happening in front of our eyes in Gaza. Like, I encourage you to speak up. And he blocked me
Oh
since
my
then.
gosh. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah, I'm not. I was a little bit sad at the beginning, but then it is what it is, because what happened in this after the October 7, it was a test for the morality of the people and where they stand. And I don't have so much lines to judge people, but this one is the line that I cannot really tolerate, when someone is unconditionally on the side of Israel.
Right.
Joey, I was born and raised in a Christian Orthodox family in
Neat.
Syria,
Yeah.
and I was exposed to major political events. I mean, I'm a third generation survivor of Armenian genocide, so you grow up with the stories, the struggle, and everything, and this shaped my thoughts and convictions about life, about politics. But I didn't make a U-turn on my political opinion, for example, when it comes to Israel, especially the Zionist project in the region, in the Middle East. That's why I'm very interested in your personal story. Maybe you could tell us, where were you born, your family and upbringing, and when were you exposed to the Zionist philosophy the first time?
Sure. Well, I was born in a little town about 30 minutes from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Mm.
So, pretty small town. Um, and I was born to Pentecostal Christian parents, basically. And I mean, when we speak about evangelicalism, it's a big tent. So Pentecostalism is evangelical.
Mhm.
Um, and they are very much at the head of, I apologize, very
No
much
worries.
at the head of this whole Christian Zionist stuff.
Mhm.
Them and the Baptist, which is really funny because in this big tent of evangelicalism, you have Baptist on one side and then you have Pentecostals on another.
Mm.
And usually historically we have conflicted and argued and stuff about specifically the Holy Spirit and all that. So there's this big tent of evangelicalism. I was born on the Pentecostal side, and of course they all believe in the Judeo-Christianity and the Zionism. And beyond that, though, my grandfather used to continuously tell my mother, since she was the time that she was born, that, you are to bless the Jewish people and Israel, and you are to honor them, and you will be cursed if you don't, kind of thing. And then my mom just, you know like most people in her generation, she just passed that down to me. And thankfully my father was a theologian as
Hmm.
well, and he taught me to question things. And as I got older, he actually took a U-turn against the rapture theology,
Hmm.
which is very much associated with why Christian Zionists believe all this, because they believe in the rapture theology. And my dad studied this his entire life, and he finally came to a point where he was like, this is BS. Like, this is BS. It's no good. This is not good theology. So I kind of had a mom on one side that was like, bless Israel unconditionally, kind of thing. We're to honor all the Jews. And then I kind of had my dad on the other side, who was thankfully provided an atmosphere where we were allowed to question things. So honestly, I never really thought much about Jewish people or Israel or Zionism. What happened was is that I started figuring out the war situation in the Middle East.
Hmm.
And I started down this path probably a couple years ago of being strictly anti-war. And because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I found out that the United States had dropped bombs on millions of Middle Easterners, which a lot of Americans don't realize that until now, that we're seeing what that looks like, which is pure hell. So I set out to find out what the heck is causing all these wars? Who is behind all these wars? And so I ended up figuring out that it was Zionism that was to blame for all of these wars. Zionism in the United States and Zionism in Israel. So that was probably a couple years ago. And as I went down that path, I slowly, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago, started meeting online Muslims
Hmm.
and Arabs. And and I've even stayed up all night talking on the phone with Muslims, like, what the heck's going on over there, kind of thing. And they told me what was going on. And I was mortified, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I went to Bible school, and I started at Christ for the Nations in Dallas, Texas. And every day it was nailed into our heads to care about the nations of the world. It was called
Hmm.
Christ for the Nations. And but I realized even there that there was so much like hypocrisy, where people would be, cheering on one thing one day and then cheering on another thing another day, and they would conflict. And so I started realizing, oh, that's when I started realizing evangelicalism has a lot of conflicting things going on. Then what really got me to step away from evangelicalism for good was when they voted Trump into office. And it wasn't even really about Trump. It was about the fact that he represented everything I was told was sinful and bad growing up. And then I saw the evangelical church, almost all of them, come together and vote for someone who is clearly not a Christian, who's clearly never lived a Christian life, who clearly will say anything, like, he doesn't care. So this really disturbed me. And that's kind of when I was like, oh, I guess I'm just not evangelical anymore, but I'm surrounded by evangelicals, because I grew up in this. So my mom, my family, they all go to evangelical churches still. I mean, I serve at a food pantry that's Christian evangelical, so I'm surrounded by evangelicals. Like I can't get away from evangelicals, no matter how hard I try. So I have felt like, okay, maybe I'm supposed to speak to the evangelicals.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm supposed to love them and stop being angry at them, because I've been angry at them, and love them enough to tell them the truth. And
Mm.
so that's kind of where I got, and I started meeting, lots of Muslims online. And I started realizing, oh my gosh, these are the nicest people in the world. Like, it is so insane that we have been taught that these are terrorists when these are actually the sweetest, kindest people. And they have built me back up. Muslims, they built me back up when I was down. I also went through a very dark period several years ago when my father died, and he was only 64, and I watched him die of cancer,
Mm.
and I completely lost my mind. So that also gives me another more empathy for the children of Palestine that are losing their parents left and right, and even the adults that are losing their parents, because it hurts just as bad when
Yes.
you're an adult and you're losing your parents. So I don't know. I just have developed this unique relationship with Muslims and online, because there's barely any Muslims in my town. I don't know. I've seen one in the past like 5 years. So there's my Muslim friends are online, and they have showed me that they're innocent in this, and this whole situation infuriates me. It's like I'm like, so I've never experienced any kind of genocide, but I am Irish, and we all know what the Irish have been through. And
Yep.
so that I think that passes down from generation to generation, to where we do tend to care more about these social justice issues. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today, I guess you could
That's
say.
that's that's an amazing story, especially when you mentioned now that you're an Irish. Everything starts making more sense to me. I was born and raised in Syria, in a city called Aleppo, and we, the Christians, were around between 1.5 million to 2 million people in Syria, and the majority, 22 million, were Muslims. And I lived among the Muslim people, and
Yes.
I studied among Muslim people. I fasted with the Muslims. I worked with Muslims. I studied with Muslims. And the thing was, in Syria, you don't even ask like if you're a Muslim or not, but sometimes from their names that they are Muslims. And
Right.
at no time I felt like I'm discriminated against because I'm from a different religion. What they
Right.
say is, you have your religion, I have my religion, and God is the judge. And at the end of the day, we believe in the same God.
Mhm.
And I know the Muslim people so well because of that. And I know that what's happening in Palestine, the core of the issue, is not Muslims against Jews or Jews against Muslims. It is a matter of these people had their farms, they had their territories been stolen from them, and they
Right.
are fighting back against the occupation. So
Right.
if the occupier was Hindus, they came from Hindustan and they occupied their territory, this would have been a fight between the Muslims and the Hindus because they are the occupiers, right?
100%.
When the Crusaders came to the region, it was between the Muslims and the Christians. And it's
Right.
not because they are Christian, because they were the occupiers. This is the context that I always try to explain, and why Muslims were portrayed as the evil in the past. I mean, in every society, you have evil people. Even among
Right.
the Muslim people, you have evil people, but it's not like collectively they have this evil character. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, the United States is a superpower, and
Mhm.
any superpower, they need enemies. You cannot sustain your military expenditure and wars around the world unless you have an enemy. Against who are you going to fight? China was very weak in 1991. The Russians were very weak in who against who are they going to fight? So they have to find a new boogeyman, and that
Right.
is the Muslims. So all of a sudden we have the 9/11 attacks, and those stories about the 9/11
Yes,
attacks, I'm
I
sure
do.
more than I do. And they found this boogeyman. They came to Iraq, they went to Afghanistan, they came to Syria, they went to Libya, and they have occupied, because in their eyes, every problem looks like a nail, so every solution is like a hammer.
Right.
And that's how they destroyed the Muslim communities and the Muslim countries, and in eventually us, the Christians, because
Right.
Iraq had 1.5 million Christians, now 150,000 Christians.
Wow.
Syria had 2 million Christians, and now it's probably 80 to 70% have become refugees or migrated because of the war. So the American wars, backed by the Zionists, harmed the Christians as
Yeah.
much as the Muslims.
Right.
So when I watched this interview of Tucker Carlson with the pastor from Bethlehem, and he was speaking about his case against Israel, I was really surprised to see so many evangelical Christians from the United States telling him that he's a liar and he's pro-Hamas. They don't want to believe the Christians of the Middle East. Where is this coming from, that these people really have distrust of everyone except for the Israelis?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, we have to be honest that Israelis, a lot of them are European, so they look white. They're at least white passing. I don't know what they are half the time, but they're at least look white. So I think that's part of it, that we know that America struggles with racism since the very beginning. So I know that's probably part of it. Second of all, those same people tend to struggle with bigotry towards other religions. So, but third of all, we always have to go back to 9/11, because 9/11 is really when it was kind of planted into the American mind that Muslims are the boogeyman. And that's when people started looking for the worst of the worst Muslims, that they could say, oh, all Muslims are like this, And another point I wanted to make, how you said it's not really like Jew against Muslim. I never really thought about Jewish people until the last 8, 9 months. So I think it's hilarious when people are calling me anti-Semitic, because I'm like, I didn't know any of this. It's you can't look back at my history and see me just harping on Jews. So I didn't know any of this at all. And like you said, if it were the other way around, if Muslims were occupying and killing and persecuting and genociding the Jews, I would be sticking up for the Jews.
Yes.
So this is though I do think there are some religious things we need to talk about as Christians and as Jews, maybe even as Muslims too, because religion does impact the way people think. But I personally have never had more Jewish friends, to be honest, because I've had some anti-Zionist Jews really, really embrace me and help me, and I can tell that they're the real deal because they're calling out their own people. And so, as long as you're a Jewish person that's calling out this Zionism and calling out this genocide, and I'm cool with you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yes.
totally cool with you. But if you're a really prideful person where it's like, I say something about Judaism or Jews that's just educational, and if you can't even handle like a little bit of criticism, like, we're probably not going to be good friends. So I'm trying my best to um stay in this lane of where, I don't blame all Jewish people. I think that would be an ignorant
Yeah.
thing to do. It would be stupid, because we know that there are so many Jewish people just living everyday lives. The problem, I think, are the oligarchs, a lot of the leaders in the Jewish community, and of course in the Christian community, that are backing them up. So what led to this is preying on the American weakness of racism already. Instead of trying to bring the races together, we have people in charge that are constantly trying to divide us by race and by religion and by skin color and by whatever, anything they can divide us over. So that, I mean, the mainstream media is owned by Zionists on all sides. And so that's where most people are getting their information.
Yes.
You know, and I believe these pundits are literally war criminals because they are complicit
Yeah.
in Zionist wars, and
Yes.
they know the truth. That's
Yes.
what I mean. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like these people are stupid. They're not stupid.
No.
They're very smart. They're
Yes.
very gifted, intelligent, creative people. You know, they make up stories that are easy to believe, and there's constant distraction, constant gaslighting, constant lying, constant. The whole point is just to make you so confused that you don't know what to believe or who to believe anymore. So that's what's going on in America. People are just very, very confused. And that's because that is what the Zionists have done. They have done that on purpose so that they could continue their genocide.
Yeah. My eye opening on this case was in 2013 or 14. And a friend of mine told me, you're writing lots of articles for free on Facebook in Arabic. Why don't you write for a reputable newspaper? And it never, I never, my plan was never to become a journalist. It's just like it happened.
Same.
It just happened. It just happened. And I
Same.
was like, okay, what are we going to write about? I started checking, and I said, I want to check who controls the US media. And this was in 2013 or 14. And this was my first article. And I started to dig in. And then every time you dig in more, you realize that all the media outlets and the entertainment industry in the United States, the press, the newspapers, back then they were controlled by 7 corporations. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And out of 7 corporations, now they are 6. Back then, out of 7 corporations, 6 of them are controlled by the Zionists. And this was
100%.
and this was like, okay, who is giving you the information? These people
Right.
are giving you the information, and they are able, like, for example, the wording is very important in journalism. And yesterday the BBC, they're reporting about the new airstrike that killed civilians in Rafah. It
Right.
was like a blast killed 30 people in blast.
Right.
What does blast mean? If you say airstrike, everybody knows it's Israel, right? A
Right.
blast happened there. It's just from where this
Right.
blast came from, right? They don't
Right.
say who is behind these attacks. And so you're very correct. They are complicit. And I remember Julian Assange said once that journalists are war criminals. He didn't say about all the journalists. He said those who are aiding and enabling these endless wars of the establishment, they're war criminals. And I have enough conscience to reject these people and to confront them at every possible opportunity that I have, that you are serving war criminals. You are by extension a war criminal. That's why I wanted to create this YouTube channel to try to speak to people, try to tell them that these people are creating parallel realities that have nothing
100%.
to do with the real issues on the ground. But when you check the United States, it's very sad. Like, there is a large consensus among the political establishment on both sides, Democrat, Republican. I mean, there are already 2 parties, and they both unconditionally support Israel. Trump
Right.
supports Israel, Biden supports Israel, and there is like a competition among them who is more pro Israel to be elected in the United States, right?
Right. It's ridiculous. I think that if anything good has become out of this horrible, horrible genocide, it's exposing the Zionists are exposing themselves. I was telling my husband this morning, I was like, if these Zionists would have just responded to the Hamas situation, even if it was a heavy response, but it was just 1 week or something, nobody would be talking about this anymore. We'd all be, not nobody, but a lot of people would be forgetting about it. The fact that they will not stop killing children is making people go research alternative views. And I tell everybody, research on Rumble. That's still where you'll get a little bit less censorship. YouTube, it helps some, but we have to remember who owns all of these all of these things. So yeah, they based off my research, the Zionists own basically everything that can be owned at the top. At
Mm.
the very top, they are at the top of the world. That's my opinion based off my research. But we know 100% that they are behind all mainstream media and Hollywood. They created a lot of Jewish people created Hollywood, you
Mm.
know. So, and I mean, we're seeing a lot about the Jewish mafia. So I want to separate this from the working class Jew that's just trying to do their own thing to these elites that happen to be Jewish. We don't hate them because they're Jewish. You know, we don't like them because they do evil all around the world, and especially right now in the Middle East. And so personally, I will not vote for any Zionist ever again. And honestly, I don't. They're so entrenched in our system at this point that I don't think anything could solve this except the fall of the American empire. Like, I don't know. I literally don't think there's enough decent people in the federal government to come up against these Zionists who were running the Epstein blackmail child sex trafficking ring. And we know half of these American politicians are pedophiles. Like, everyone knows it. You know, they're not. That's a big reason why I think they're not coming out and saying anything, because either they're being paid hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars by AI pack, or they're under some sort of blackmail. It's almost like Israel planned for this moment long ago
Mm.
so that there would be almost zero accountability. They want this greater Israel project, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not just Palestine that they want. They want like the surrounding areas. They believe that God promised them this, a God they don't even believe in. They believe that God promised them this greater Israel. So that's why there's all this destruction in the Middle East. It
Yeah.
was all leading up to this. Was all, I believe all of this was planned, all of it. And I believe that they knew Hamas was coming. You know, I believe that uh I think these politicians, as well as mainstream media, as well as most of the celebrities, know exactly who's behind all this. And I think they're scared. We
Mm.
also are pretty sure that the Zionists shot JFK. So the Zionist, the mafia, you know, the higher up people, we know that that's probably true at this point. So there's a lot of reasons why our politicians are Zionists. You know, either they're evil people, or they want more money, or they're terrified of that they'll get shot like
Yeah.
JFK got shot.
Yesterday I was checking my social media and I saw this photo of Nikki Haley. She's writing her name on a bomb in Israel, and it says, "Finish them. America loves Israel." I mean, I know that she received $1.5 million from the Israel lobby, so I wasn't even shocked or surprised. I told you before we start this, even if I see her drinking blood now, I would think that it's some sort of a ritual, some
Right.
satanic ritual. I wouldn't be shocked of her at all. But who shocked me the most was the RFK. RFK shocked me.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way he speaks, very defensively, like he's very defensive, and you feel he's nervous when he's speaking about Israel and he wants to prove a point. Like, you feel like they have something on him, they have a tape or something on him. Like, he
Right.
didn't he didn't
That's how it
receive
feels.
he didn't receive APAC money yet, as far as I know. But
Yeah.
what makes RFK so Zionist is just beyond me. Like,
Yeah.
it just raises so many questions. Why he just
Yeah.
killed his.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point we need to understand that our politicians here in America, 99% of them are owned by the Zionists in some way. And I believe this was planned long ago. And our government was completely captured, for lack of a better term, by Zionists, including RFK Jr. And it's so humiliating too, because I mean, he has to know they were involved with killing his father and his uncle. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of evidence for that. Like, it's not like we're just making these conspiracy theories up. So he has to know that. So part of it could be fear. Part of it could be, dang, you killed my family. You
Mhm.
might kill me too. But I think it probably is something blackmail, something gross and disgusting. If
Yeah.
he's not even getting AI pack money, what else could it be?
Yeah, the options are not many in this case. It's either blackmail or it's money. And I watch his interviews because during the pandemic or during the Corona era, it was he was one of the same people that pushed back on this case, right? And also against wars in Ukraine, for example. He said, "What are we doing in Syria? It was wrong in Iraq." But the moment it comes about Israel, he flips all of a sudden.
Right.
But the APAC couldn't buy the youth in the United States. And those were the ones that surprised me, I would argue, because I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting at all for the younger generation in the United States to be as informed like on the Palestine case. All those who were not informed as much, I see interviews of them. They're speaking very eloquently and explaining what's happening. The media is trying to provoke them, and of course, there are people who are more intelligent than others. The media tries to pick the less intelligent one among them to show them like
Right.
they are stupids, da da da. But it was surprising for everyone, and I think this is the hope comes from these people, and this is what makes the Zionist lobby and the Zionists very nervous
Yeah.
that the younger generation, they are going to become the next rulers, they are going to become the next governor, they're going to become the next ministers, right?
Right.
And this is how I think the I don't want for the United States to crumble as an empire, because it will have a very big negative repercussions on the global economy unless the Chinese and the Russians establish parallel economies. I don't know if that's possible. So I want for the United States to be reformed, from
Yeah.
within, and I see hope in them. Do
Yeah.
you see that there is a hope, like in the United States, to change course on Israel?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't get the future on board with you, you're done. It's really that simple. And the youth, I'm so, first of all, I want to say how proud I am of them, because they don't get that a lot. They get a lot of a lot of hate, and probably even their own family. Some of their own families are probably like, why are you doing this?
Mhm.
So I want to say to them that I get them and I'm proud of them, and to just keep going and going and fighting and fighting. And they're finding out what's really going on in the world, just like I did. They are struggling, just like most Americans are financially struggling, but no one is struggling more than people in their 20s. So they really got the short end of the stick here. Millennials kind of did too, which I'm a millennial, but they got it the worst, where they can't ever buy a house. They don't even think about having children or a family, because they can't even afford to take care of themselves. So when you're living like this life where you can't afford anything, even though you're working full time, or in school or whatever, you really start to get to a point where, like, why is this happening? Why am I so poor? Why am I poorer than my parents were? It's supposed to be that each generation does better than their parents. That's a healthy society. Well, our society is going backwards. And that's why the young people are over it. They are over it because they are not going to be able to have a future under this Zionist rule. So they know it needs to come down. They know that we need to get Zionists out. And I know that therefore Israel and the Zionist project in general will eventually fail, because it has to, if it doesn't have the support. And really, what what I think is really holding it up is Christian Zionism. Well, once Christians really find out how much these Zionists hate Christians, and I mean, all the proof is there. I mean, you go to Israel, they'll spit on you if you're a
Hmm.
Christian. They're teaching their kids to stone Christians in Israel. They literally are. And right now it just looks like little kids throwing sticks and stones at them. But what does that lead to? And then they also are creating laws in Israel where you're not allowed to share the gospel, which we know they're trying to do in America as well. So I think there are enough intelligent Christians that can say, hey, these people are not for us here. Why are we holding this project up when it's really feeding the seeds of our own destruction? So I'm hoping between the young people finding out what's really going on and enough intelligent Christians finding out what's really going on, between those two things, I don't see how the Israel project can survive.
Since you mentioned the Christian people, and as I mentioned that I'm a Christian, and my grandparents used to go to Bethlehem.
Yep.
They were able to go to Bethlehem, and now we are unable to go to Bethlehem
Right.
because it's occupied. And
Right.
people say, no, it's in the hands of the Palestinian Authority. However, if you want to go to Bethlehem, you have to go to an Israeli airport. And Israelis would not allow anyone holding a Syrian passport to go. So
Right.
I'm basically, as a Christian from Syria, I am not allowed to go and visit my Christian sites in Jerusalem. And when I mentioned this was funny because I mentioned this under the video of Tucker Carlson with the Bethlehem, with the pastor from Bethlehem, and it received the most likes under the video of Tucker Carlson. But I received so much hate from American evangelical Christians.
Oh,
They
they're
were like,
mean. They're mean.
oh my God. It's like they want to decapitate me or
They're
something,
mean.
because they say I'm a bloody liar and I'm a Jew hater. And I was like, what are these people speaking about? I'm just telling just fact. I can't go to Bethlehem. And somebody says, Kevork, you're lying. Last year, I'm a Christian from Canada and I was in Jerusalem. I was like, yeah, you just mentioned from Canada. And the other one says from the United States. I am from Syria. I'm the neighboring country of Palestine, and I cannot go to Palestine. What is so difficult to understand in my statement? Why do you make me a liar? And here comes this point that I wanted to ask you, because besides the political establishment in the United States, we have this the evangelical church and the priests. I watched some videos; they terrified me of this. Preachers from the evangelical churches, and I saw some of them you reported on your X account, and they're preaching pro-Israel talking points, talking about Armageddon, the second coming of Jesus Christ. But when I read and understand what they're speaking of, it looks to me like this is the most anti-Semitic ideology ever. Like they want for the Jewish people to go to Palestine and get killed there, so that the second coming of, it's like, how is this even working? It sounds like anti-Semitism for me.
It is. It's the most ridiculous and unholy alliance that there maybe ever was. Because you got I will say the extremist Jews on one side and the extremist Christians on the other side, and both extremes kind of hate each other. Like, yet they're sticking together because they're both in the Judeo-Christian cults. And that may look different in the synagogue than it looks in the mega evangelical church, but ultimately they are all Zionists, and none of them, I don't even think most of them even know or have a relationship with Jesus Christ, or else how could they support genocide? How could they support endless wars if they actually had a knowledge of who Jesus Christ was? So that's what I always say. I always say that Jesus Christ is how we are going to help evangelical Christians see the error of their ways. Basically they think they're Christians, but they're not following the teachings of Jesus Christ, which we know is love, charity, peace, forgiveness, all these things. So So yeah, what was the question though?
Like it's not like a question. It's just like I'm fascinated how they preach about Armageddon in Palestine, which basically, in their understanding, it has to lead into the killing of the bigger portion of the Jewish people there.
Yeah.
So they're basically sending them there to die, and then they say that we love Israel and we love the Jewish people.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, even on the Jewish side, if you start studying the extreme Chabad, is that how you say it? Chabad? I don't know. They also believe that there has to be some sort of destruction in Israel. They do. They believe that there needs to be an Armageddon for their Messiah to come, and which is not obviously not Jesus, like, and the Christians believe there needs to be an Armageddon for Jesus to come back. So they're fighting for the same things. It's just different messiahs. But you know what I'm starting to learn? I think we're giving evangelical Zionists too much credit. Maybe they're just seriously not Christians at all. Like maybe they're not confused. Maybe they're not. Maybe they just genuinely are hateful. Warmongering, psychopathic people. I keep reaching out anyway because maybe there's one lost sheep in there, and we know Jesus says to go after the one lost sheep. So I keep reaching out to them anyway, hoping that I can save a few from the destruction that they are bringing upon themselves. And yeah, they do believe that 2/3 of the Jews need to die in Israel before Jesus Christ will come back. So if you were a real Christian and you thought that was going to happen, wouldn't you be like, hey, don't go to Israel if
Don't
you're
go
a
to Israel.
Jew? Because God's going to blow that up, like, so if that's the case, if you believe that, why would you want to encourage Jewish people to go where they're going to die? So yeah, it is anti-Semitic in a way, but it's not based. It's based on these religious cultish beliefs, that have been ingrained into the American psyche. Even, I mean, it's ridiculous. Our geopolitics are basically based on the Left Behind series, the Hollywood Left Behind series. Because this has been implanted through Hollywood, through mainstream media, through our education system in every way. I tell people that I keep saying this because it's so important. This is all planned. This is a psychotic group of people claiming to be Jews and Christians at the very top, planning an Armageddon, and they're trying to drag us all down with them, basically.
This is what they say. It's not like we're trying to analyze.
No,
Like they're saying it on video. We have the videos they're talking about this. And I totally agree with you about the psychotic and the psychopathy of some of these elites. And yesterday when I watched this photo of Nikki Haley, I said, I think we need to have a serious conversation about the pandemic of criminal psychopathy among US politicians. Like as if you have to be a psychopath and a criminal to become a US politician. And this woman, she was the US ambassador to the UN, so she's supposed to be a diplomat. She's signing, putting her name on bombs that are falling on the heads of children. Half the deaths in Gaza, 60% are women and children, and this woman is putting her name on it. So how can you explain that? Jory,
and she and just to add, she did that the day after that Israel bombed tents. Mostly women and children. They bombed tents. They bombed the refugees that they made refugees. So the fact that this is I believe, and you're a Christian too, so you might too, but this is a satanic, like evil, satanic, demonically empowered plot. And it's global. It's a global plot. That's what I'm trying to help people understand, because people will detach themselves from it and they'll say, oh, well, that's just the Middle East. They're always fighting. What are we supposed to do about it? It's not my problem, basically. But it is our problem. It is our problem if you understand that these people are psychopaths and they have nukes and they plan to use them.
Yeah.
If you understand that, you understand that this is all of our problem. This is the fight of humanity. It really is.
Yeah, they're talking about nuking Gaza all the time. It's like it's like a candy. They're talking about nuking Iran. They're talking about nuking Gaza. It's like, and the only nation in the Middle East that has nukes is Israel. And now everybody speaks about Iran, but they have the nukes, but we have to be afraid of Iran.
Right.
Anyways, it's
Right.
crazy. Joey, where do you want? We have around 900 people watching us between YouTube, X, and Rumble. Where can the people find your work and posts?
Sure. Well, just a couple corrections. It's Jory Micah, not
Micah.
Mika.
Okay.
Even though Mika's very pretty, it's Micah. And I did not write a book called Breaking the Glass Steeple. I did a website called Breaking the Glass Steeple, and it could have been a book because I wrote more than probably 3 books worth of blog posts back when blogging was very popular. But right now I've kind of let the website die off because we're not, these are new times. And I'm really doing most of my work now on X, AKA Twitter, at Jory Micah. So that's JoryMicah. And I hope to start some kind of show because that seems like that's what's the most popular thing to do right now.
We should. Yes.
Like I'm like, why am I going to pay to have a website? Nobody cares about my website. It's just not the thing right now. So I'm going to try to do some kind of show. I think that's kind of my goal. And yeah, so you can find me on X. I'm on there way too much probably. So
no,
but I feel like we're in a war. I feel like we're truly in, not just feel like, I know we're in a war. And it's not just a physical war, it's a spiritual war. And a lot of people don't realize that because spiritual things are unseen, so it kind of freaks people out. But if you are a discerning person, if you are a spiritual person, you know that this is a spiritual battle, that this is bigger than all of us. And we can't win this unless we depend on good and God, and what we see as God is goodness and love and truth. And really, it's we can end this the faster we tell the truth, which is not easy because a lot of the things that we're not supposed to say, because we have been brainwashed and taught that these are no-nos. But those are the things you need to pay attention to the most, I feel like. If you feel afraid to say something, you need to ask yourself why. And say it anyway. So that's what I really want to encourage everybody, to be bold and to be confident and to know that good and God wins in the end. It always does. It just takes some time. And God's on our side, and we're gonna win this thing. We really are. And that's it. Come see me at X, and I try to communicate with people as much as I can.
I already added your X account in the description of this YouTube video and Rumble, and also I tagged you now on X, or formerly known as Twitter, so can everybody find you there. So this was an amazing conversation with you, Jory Micah. I'm pronouncing your name finally correctly at the end of the video.
How do you say your name?
Kevork Almassian. Kevork is an Armenian name, actually. Yeah.
It's cool. I like it.
I just wanted to say just a final word before I leave this conversation, that telling the truth comes with consequences. I understand that. However, when you put the cost and benefit, you rest assured, guys, if you don't speak the truth and you don't push back against these lies and against this criminality, it will come and haunt you. Like if not now, in the near future, if not in the near future, in a few years. So this is a collective battle against this type of mentality. People who see us as flies and they can just step over us, kill us, and maim our bodies just for the sake of them making some financial benefits. That's why we have podcasts, we have social media platforms, people are speaking up. So that's what we do here on Syriana Analysis. If you want to support this work, you can simply just like this video, share it with your friends. And if you want to support the work itself, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will come to you guys again in like 50 minutes from now. We will go live with Vanessa Bili from Damascus. She is joining us to speak about the grand strategy of Netanyahu for Gaza in 2035. He has a vision for Gaza in 2035. So let's see what that is about. Jory, thank you so much for joining me again. And thank you guys all for tuning into this live streaming, and see you very soon. Salam.